Well, I have been looking forward to this day for some time, Mike. Thank you so much for joining me on this call. Thank you for, your encouragement about my Love for a Lifetime album. And it gives me a chance just to say how much I've been moved by reading your latest book, Same Old, Same New, The Consolation of the Ordinary. There's just been so many times I just reading it and I'm thinking, I can't believe it. I know this guy who wrote this book. We used to be neighbors, of course, way back in the day. And your words just mean a lot to me. So to have this conversation is really special.
Well, it means a lot to me too, Brian. Having, yeah, once been neighbors for several years in a very special community. And with my history going right back to not quite the early days of the vineyard, but close. Followed your music right through the years, and so often been moved by your worship songs.
Mm.
And now to have this new album of love songs to your wife, I have to tell you, Karen the other day was listening to your CD in the kitchen while washing dishes,
Mm.
and she was imagining that I was the one singing to her.
Hmm.
And isn't that great? Like
Yeah. Oh,
so
that's so encouraging. And that's what, the hope of a songwriter is that you're not just speaking for yourself, but you're speaking for other people. You're putting into words what other people want to say, maybe couldn't put into words, maybe don't have the gift of melody, whatever it is. I just did a live event the other day in Alberta, and this man came up to me at the end of the concert, and he was clutching the Love for a Lifetime CD, and he had tears in his eyes, and he said, "That song that you sang tonight, A Love That Doesn't Fade, is our song. That so describes my wife and my relationship for the past 45 years. Thank you for putting into words what our love means to us." And I was like, I'm looking at him and I'm almost tearing up. I'm thinking, this is the dream. The dream of a songwriter is to be able to put those kinds of things into words and somebody else saying, no, that's my song, even though you wrote it, it's my song. And I've had that feeling too, reading several of your books, Mike, and practicing the presence of people, the Gospel according to Job, your new one, Same Old, Same New, the consolation of the ordinary. I have talked so much over the recent years about how important ordinary things and ordinary life is to people because it feels like in so many of the Christians circles we move in, there's so much emphasis on extraordinary and hype and bigger and louder and everything. And I'm thinking, we're missing it, guys. Like the real miracle of life is found in the seemingly ordinary. So, and along you come, and you put out this book, and as soon as I saw the title and I saw the subtitle, Consolation of the Ordinary, I went, yes. And of course, you're a wonderful craftsman with your words and your sentences. And I'm a lyricist. So anyway, yeah, so thanks for that encouragement you just shared. And I want to encourage you. I want to have a conversation today, actually, about some moments in your books. And, you can ask me questions about any moments in my songs, and we'll see where this goes. Okay. I've
yeah,
got some quotes written down here. Maybe I want to start with the album cover because the album cover of Love for a Lifetime is, two swans and if and I it didn't hit me until later. There it is. Mike showing he's a proud owner of Love for a Lifetime. Thanks, Mike. And But your one of your was Mystery of Marriage your first book?
Yeah, it was my first book as
Okay.
a Christian.
Okay, so
And
so fascinating. So, and I read the first time, boy, several decades ago when, I think shortly after it came out, and loved it. And there was a part in that book that always, I mean, lots of it stuck with me, but the prologue, and you describe a moment in your honeymoon where you go to a monastery, and that's a kind of a funny backstory and kind of threads through. And we don't have time to get into all the threads that we could get into. Why, why were Mike and Karen at a monastery on their honeymoon? That's for another conversation. But what I've never forgotten is your description of these two hawks. And I'm going to just read one brief little moment here from the prelude because I want people that are watching this to catch this because if they haven't read your book, I sure hope they do after this conversation. But you're there at this monastery, but it's not about the buildings or the monks or whatever. What grabs your attention eventually is as you're leaving, you see these two hawks. Karen, I think, sees it first, points it out to you, and then you start. And I've never forgotten this, Mike. This is something else. I've never forgotten this. And you say, I'm just going to quote here from page 19 in the prologue. The longer we watched, the clearer it became that these hawks were doing absolutely nothing of any practical import. They were not hunting, for example, or looking for anything, or going anywhere. They were simply playing. They were enjoying the warm blueness of the day. Love that. The strength and skill in their wings, the fun of flying, and perhaps most of all, the fun of each other. I do not know much about hawks, but what struck me at the time curiously was that I could not recall ever seen two hawks together. Whenever I had seen a hawk before, I thought, hadn't it always been alone? So there was something in this soaring dance of the pair of them, with the whole sky all to themselves, that spoke directly to me, not just of play and freedom on a summer's day, but of the shining beauty of love, the pure ease and joy of companionship. End quote. Oh my. I remember reading that for the first time and I could see it, I could feel it, and I've never forgotten it. And then I hadn't put two and two together, and you were the one who pointed it out to me. I put two birds on the cover of my album, and you put two birds on the cover of your book, The Mystery of Marriage, at least on the original. I don't know whether different.
yeah, so here's
Yeah,
once again, it's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
your album.
yeah. Luke will
And,
put that up yet better. Yeah, yeah.
okay.
And then,
But what I really want to show you is the two, this is the Chinese edition
yeah,
of the Mystery of Marriage.
yeah,
And it's
yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow. I mean, so fascinating, right? And what is it also about us humans that we love birds, we look at birds, they speak to us, they make us feel something. My graphic artist pitched five completely different concepts of for an album cover for Love for a Lifetime. And I won't go into what all they were. They were completely different. And both Joyce and I, when we saw the two birds concept, we said, that's the one. And I think one of the reasons is your book. I think it's because it planted that seed in me of that image of joy, like you talk about it. It's not like they're doing a task. They're just they're just enjoying the wind and their wings and each other, and there's this companionship. It's so beautiful.
yeah, well, like many single men, single people, I had fears going into marriage, fears
Hmm.
of commitment and at the time I was pretty committed to being single, and
Mm.
so it was quite a surprise to fall in love. Well, I
Yeah.
had this dilemma where I had I had to sort out how to be happily married, which of course takes years to figure out.
Yeah, yeah. And how many years has it been now,
Well,
Mike?
it's coming up to 42 years,
Okay.
no, 43 years this summer.
Yeah, so we're similar. We're coming up to 41.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I could, so that image of the hawks, it, it allayed my fears
Mm,
about what I had just done. That experience happened, uh, a week after
mm.
we'd been married.
And
And
I bet you anything too for you, it stuck with you as an image and a metaphor, inviting you into the joy and the playfulness of simply being with each other and not having to accomplish anything. It's almost like the
yeah,
invitation to waste time together, like, and to
yeah,
really realize that's actually not wasting it. It's spending it in the most beautiful, meaningful way.
yeah. And I think it's so interesting that that was my first book. And now, over 40 years later, I've written a book about the ordinary life
Mm.
and the joy and meaning in ordinary
Hmm.
lives. And you have followed almost an opposite course in having
Ah.
all those years as a worship uh, musician, and now you've made an album of, let's say, ordinary love songs,
Mm.
the
Mm.
ordinary, really about the mystery of marriage.
Hmm.
So we've kind of crossed paths there.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting thought. I would just felt like maybe up until this season, I wouldn't have known what to say, what to focus on, and of course, the world is filled with songs about falling in and out of love, right? The whole process of infatuation, of falling head over heels. And that is actually an important part, right? You need to deeply, what do they call it in one song? Deeply, madly, fully, like fall in love with somebody for it to go for a lifetime. But what's the secret? The secret is staying in love.
Mm.
And then so much of that process is about finding the joy in the ordinary, finding, as your subtitle says, the consolation in the ordinary. It's not, you're not going to find it by always seeking new thrills, new excitement, the grass isn't necessarily greener on the other side. It's just grass over there too. It's, well, I'm gonna go before you
Well,
go ahead.
we could ask, where does love grow best?
Mm,
Well, it's in ordinary soil.
yeah,
It's you don't have to be at a fancy restaurant.
yeah,
In fact, if you are at a fancy restaurant, things might go sideways.
yeah,
But if you're just walking along, holding hands, uh, listening to the waves come in, or just over an ordinary breakfast,
yeah.
uh, it's just these ordinary times when then the miracle of the connection between you can kind of really
Yeah.
take.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to do one more quote from your marriage book before I'm going to open the door for you to ask me something about one of my songs or whatever you want to ask me. But I'm going to read a quote here from page 101 of The Mystery of Marriage. This is exactly what it's just coming in from what we're just talking about. And this speaks of that. And there's a bit of a link to actually one of my songs, which I find interesting. Okay, so page 101, The Mystery of Marriage, begin quote. It is the most common thing in the world for modern men and women to have their lives regularly torn apart by the agony of one broken amorous union after another. Whatever security there may once have been in secular marriage is quickly being eroded. The decisive finality of vows was intended to free people so that they need not see their life's energies being drained away in endless courting rituals, in the constant hunger for sexual fulfillment, and in a continual search for meaningful relationships. End
Mm,
quote. And I was struck by that because I recognize, like we were talking about how, where does you said, where does love grow best? Love grows best in that ordinary soil of every day and of commitment and in the context of vows that we make, you know, until death do us part, not
mm.
until I fall out of love with you or until it gets hard. And it reminds me of the lyric I wrote at the end of my song, Our Story from Love for a Lifetime, track 11, where the chorus ends with the phrases, and all the things the restless crave could never
Yeah.
touch, never replace our story. This is our love story. And I wrote that because I was feeling exactly what your quote was talking about, how we live in this restless world where we're in and out of these all these amorous attachments, thinking somehow that we're going to find love through that. And actual real love, lasting love, finds in just kind of like right where we are. So, anyway, maybe do you have a comment to that? And maybe that springboards you into question for me.
Well, I just had a visit from a pastor from Iowa whose wife is in stage 4 cancer in a wheelchair. And he told me that as it happens, they've been married same length of time as we have, 42 years. And he said that 42 years ago, when they were engaged, someone, whether it was a pastor or a counselor, said to him, "Do you love her?" Well, of course he loved her.
Mm,
Uh, and the pastor said, "No. What I mean is, when she gets cancer and
mm,
she's in a wheelchair and you're pushing her around, will you love her then?"
mm,
And he always remembered that comment.
mm.
And
Wow.
now, 42 years later, he's pushing her in a wheelchair.
Hmm.
And that is faithfulness.
Yeah.
You wrote this great song, Faithful One.
Mm,
And love is the first fruit of the Spirit. Uh,
hmm.
One of the later fruits of the Spirit is faithfulness. And
Mm,
that's what you were writing about in your new album, about long love, faithfulness. And it's it's a different thing from falling in love,
hmm.
but it's powered by that that miracle of love that is renewed every day as we look at our loved one, uh, hold her, uh, talk together.
Hmm.
Your lyrics are so full of those kind of things.
Hmm.
Maybe if I can quote my possibly my favorite uh, few lines in your album. It's from lo- uh, track 3, Can I Count the Ways? And it begins with oh, I repeated 3 times. Just that one word is so full of
Hmm.
emotion. Oh. Every time I see you, I fall in love. Oh, just to be beside you is enough. Oh, every time I hold you in my arms, I am home. Each of those lines is so simple and
Hmm.
so profound. Uh, just that first one, every time I see you, I fall in love. Well, how is love renewed? It's just by looking at the loved one.
Hmm.
And that's the same whether we're talking about married love or uh, our love for God.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
I think it's also found in a love for our offspring too, when we behold the wonder of our daughter or our son, and we commit, you know. So there's a connection between those things. But there's something about romantic love, about this attraction and this a choice, right?
mm,
And then making that choice, like you talk about the finality of vows, and then it's like the other options are gone. We've made our choice. Now, how are we gonna stay in love? You know, well, I mean, yeah, I'm saying in that lyric, oh, every time I see you, I fall in love. Like that's how I'm gonna stay in love, by keeping on seeing you, by actually opening my eyes and beholding you.
and making that decision to have and to hold
Yeah.
till death do us part, that solves so many problems.
Yeah.
You know, it,
Yeah. I
it
mean,
creates
life is
creates a
full
lot
of,
of
yeah. I mean, I say life is one challenge after another, but at least I think marriage couples that make that covenant and stick with it have less, um, uh, that issue is settled. So now, whatever comes in health, in sickness, in prosperity, in want, in all the different seasons of life, we're just going to make that choice to go through it together.
Mhm.
Um, I wrote Can I Count the Ways? Partly, like I said, we talked about how your story of the two hawks was probably in my subconscious when I went, oh, I love that cover with two birds. Well, I think in my subconscious is the old poem by Elizabeth Barrett Browning, How Do I Love Thee? Let Me Count the Ways. It's from, I think was it the late 1800s? And I remember thinking, oh, that's interesting. Well, let me count the ways. And all of a sudden it hit me, I can't count them because the number keeps on going up, because every time I see you, right?
Yeah.
It's like I discover something new. And then every time I'm beside you, okay, so then the number just keeps on, climbing. So I thought, oh, that's an idea for a song. And I walk over to the piano and I start writing this song called Can I Count the Ways? And your comment about the word oh, it's funny, when you just say it, like, oh, but when you pair that with a melody and emotion, you
Mm.
recognize you're almost at a loss for words. How am I going to express this? It's like, oh, like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
every time I see you, I fall in love. Oh, just to be beside you. Oh, then it's this feeling of like this whole experience, which involves ecstasy and pleasure and commitment and all these things. Ultimately, you know, you know, when I hold you in my arms, I'm home. Like this, ultimately, this feeling of like coming home. So yeah, I'm glad you like the song. I like the song. My wife likes the song, and there was a couple, retired British doctor, Mark and Yvonne Glasgow in the UK that sponsored that song because when they heard me doing an early version of it at an event in the UK, they went, "Oh, we want to help you make this album and we love that song," So,
Mm.
you know, that the process, right? Okay, I'm going, I got to go back into the mystery of marriage here. Uh,
Okay.
I'm going to ask you about this. It's kind of related to what we're just talking about. Page 59. Quote, "For in the first place, love convinces a couple that they are the greatest romance that has ever been, that no two people have ever loved as they do, and that they will sacrifice absolute anything in order to be together. And then marriage asks them to prove it." End quote.
Yeah. Uh,
Do you remember writing that?
I don't actually, but
Well, there, look at that. You wrote that. Isn't that an amazing quote?
yeah, I can truthfully say that I our marriage I think is at that point now
Mm.
where it's just like it's just as great as when we fell in love, well, greater. And um yeah, read the just the beginning of the quote again.
The quote is, "For in the first place, love convinces a couple." And it's this, I think you're describing this whole,
Yeah.
the falling head over heels in love.
Yeah, well, I'm convinced again. I mean, the last few years, I I don't think there's any other marriage out there like mine and Karen's.
Right.
I think we have a I mean, all due respect to you and
Yeah,
Joyce,
yeah, you have the greatest love of all.
we have it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what every couple should feel like. Like, wouldn't that be amazing if every couple that's listening to this right now could go, "Oh, what can we do to get to that point so that we can go, we are the greatest romance of all time," right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, there's another singer-songwriter, Luke Sital Singh. He's got a song about that, there's this feeling of like, I think at the beginning of every love, we we have it or we could be the greatest romance of all time. But I love the way your paragraph ends, then marriage asks us to prove it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, this is a
And that,
lifetime thing.
it is. Not only a lifetime thing, it's eternal. You know, I know Jesus says that there's no marriage in heaven, but in some sense, this relationship that we have will be forever. And I think you touched on that in one of my well, probably my favorite song uh, from the early days, Eternity.
Oh wow. Hmm.
And I love everything about that song.
Hmm.
Uh, and the sound of it is oh, I think it's just miraculous.
Hmm.
But the lyrics too. And um, looking at the lyrics just the other day, it struck me that this could be those words could be spoken by a married person.
Hmm. Hmm.
And there's only one line in the middle where it definitely turns into a prayer. For
Yeah.
we will be, I will be yours, you will be mine. It begins, but then it goes, for we will be with you in
Yeah.
eternity.
Yeah.
And then that you is capitalized
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's speaking to God.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the rest of the song could easily take its place in your new album
Yeah.
as a song about marriage.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. And I think there's lots of double and triple meanings in songs, and Sometimes I think, I've got a song on the Love for a Lifetime called We're Not Alone, which has it's a love song of sorts, but it also could totally be about us and our maker.
Mm,
Um, but the thing is that when I wrote Eternity, it was in the season where I was leaning into just the promise and the treasure of intimacy that we can have with our maker, right? You know, that we don't have to wait till the other side to have, that we can have that, I will be yours, you will be mine. So yeah, yes, it's going to be together for all eternity, but it starts now.
mm, see?
And then my best friend died in a tragic drowning accident. And I sang this song publicly it had only been my secret song, and I sang it publicly for the first time at his funeral in the summer of 1990. And so there was also then that was like the song was like, okay, my friend has passed through the veil of death, but we also have hope, right? It
Mm,
talks about it in the book of Revelation at the end, there'll be no more tears, there will be no more like separation, right?
mm,
And so there was all of that stuff going on in my life. And then my mom, as she was preparing to pass, she had a sickness and she knew she only had months left. And then she asked me, Brian, you know, I want you to sing Eternity at my memorial. And whew,
oh,
that was hard to sing, but
mm,
also healing to sing.
mm,
And we did I don't know if you've heard the latest recording in 2019 on my Faithful One album, kind of like legacy songs. We re-recorded several of my early legacy songs, and we did a brand new recording of Eternity, which is my favorite of
oh,
all the recordings. And Daphne came back and sang it with me again. She had first sung it with me in 1990, and she sang it like what? That's almost 30 years later in 2019. So, yeah, if you're listening and watching to this, you could check out that version. It's on the Faithful One album.
yeah, I will for sure.
Yeah. Okay. I want we don't know, have tons of time left, but I need to talk about your latest book, Same Old, Same New. And you can, if you want to break in and ask me anything, you go for it. But I, I find this book. One of the reasons I love this book because of what it's about. And I love the way you broke it down into these short chapters in a way that is just almost like a perfect way to end a day or a perfect way to begin a day, and to
Mm,
just either reflecting or back or forward and going, how can I reawaken wonder in the ordinary in my life? And I'm going to read uh, two quotes to start with. One is on page 50. It's a very simple sentence. If we're looking for the extraordinary, we'll miss the hand of God. End quote.
mm, yeah,
And
amen.
yeah, amen. You know, and in my own words, I've said this to so many people, and as the whole modern worship movement has gotten more and more into intensity and striving for, you know, supernatural, crazy stuff, I keep on thinking, no, what we need to do is dial things down and find the divine in the ordinary. So this is just a beautiful, clear, if we keep on, it's almost like addicts. If we keep on seeking the extraordinary, we're going to miss the hand, the touch, the whispers of God. I'm going to do one more little quote and then I'm going to get you to just respond. The next page in the book, page 51. So the choice is clear. We can exist in what Thoreau termed quiet desperation, or else we can develop a tender-hearted affection for all that is little and commonplace in our lives. In fact, I love this, you asked this, why not prefer the ordinary? Instead of exalting so-called important matters, thereby relegating all else to unimportance, try giving preference to the ordinary and so discover the real meaning of life. End quote.
Mm, yeah. Uh, well, one of my favorite, maybe the nugget in that book that is my own favorite, I can't quote it exactly, but it's something like, if you discover uh, how rich the ordinary is, uh,
Hmm.
you'll be you'll be a billionaire. You
Yeah,
know, you'll have discovered your own gold mine
yeah,
because there is so much ordinariness in our lives, so much uh, drudgery
yeah,
and boredom and repetition and uh, things we just have to do. If you can really get into that stuff, you've got it made.
yeah,
And there must be a reason why is like that.
yeah,
There's a preponderance of all this ordinary stuff. And it's because I think that's where the real gold is.
yeah. Well,
And
it's where life happens. We were talking before, where does love grow? And it flourishes in the ordinary. I don't know what the whole COVID experience was like for you, but for me as a recording and touring musician, initially it was a little bit like, 2020 lockdown, and I had 40 events throughout Canada and Europe, all cancel, gone, which is part of how I make a living and pay my bills and feed my family. And I remember, initially for the first, little bit, I was like, wow. This is tough, but I know it's tough for everybody in different ways. And then we have our youngest son, Isaiah, has special needs. He's Fragile X syndrome, requires support and care, and he lives with us. And all of a sudden, what started happening is because I couldn't travel anywhere, I couldn't do any of those things, I started paying attention to just the simple, ordinary things in my home, in caring for him. I did all of his morning care routine. I did all of his evening care routine. And I did this for like 2 years every single day. And we live on a little piece of land that my parents bought when I was 4 years old. So I've been on this land for over 50 years. But there were things about it that I hadn't noticed before, just in the trees and just different things. And I remember over a period of time starting to just be so incredibly thankful that everything in the world had slowed down and that I had permission to fully inhabit the ordinary rhythms of my day, the ordinariness of where I lived. Of course, it's also a matter of perspective because and I'm gonna my next quote from your book is going to bring this out really clearly, is that which maybe is ordinary and appears ordinary is in fact extraordinary, but not in some kind of thrill junkie addict seeking way, but in a very life-giving, sustaining way. And I mean, what was your experience like in that season for you? How were you finding your joy?
uh, actually, it didn't affect me very much at all. I'm a writer. I do
Yeah.
my work at home,
Yeah.
and I just put my head down and did a lot of work, and
Yeah.
got uh, I wrote this new book during that time.
So
Um,
thankful.
for uh, for 10 years, I love to read, and for 10 years, I had noticed this idea in so much that I read, this idea
Mm.
of the wonder of ordinary things. And so I began collecting quotes, and as you know, this book is full of quotes from
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
people. And uh, so for 10 years, I collected quotes. And finally, I thought, well, I should write about that myself.
Mm.
You know, when I sat down to write the book, it came together in 2 months.
Oh, wow.
It
That's
basically
extraordinary.
finished it in 2 months because I've been dwelling in that theme for so
Right.
long.
Yeah.
And I think as someone who, I am a writer, but my real calling is prayer.
Mm.
Uh, I live a life of prayer, almost like a monk, much more so as a married man than I ever would have been in a monastery, I think.
Mm. Mm.
Uh, and because uh, so much love the life of prayer, um, it's taught me that God's ordinary voice, well, much like Elijah discovered in the cave of Horeb, is God's ordinary voice is the still small voice,
Mm.
um, the sound of almost the sound of silence. And
Mm.
uh, so for me, COVID was a time of dwelling more than ever in contemplative prayer and in simplicity and more and more as I've grown older, that life of prayer flows naturally into writing. So
Mm.
the two are so interwoven I can hardly
Mm.
tell them apart.
Describe, Mike, where you're in, would you call that Northern Ontario? Where would you describe the geography and the place where you live?
Well, it's Northern Ontario in that we're 2 hours north of Toronto.
But that's not
So
really Northern Ontario, true,
no,
because
no, it's a place called Muskoka. It's
yeah.
cottage country. It's Canadian Shield. So we have these beautiful lakes. And right outside the window here, if I could show you, we live by the river and there's a beautiful waterfall right
Oh,
there. And yeah, I have a great setting to write in.
hmm. And that I think that matters. Now it's interesting, of course, us writers, we rely on a lot of imagination. So we can be anywhere and imagine something and then go there through what we're thinking and then what we're writing. But I do think that beauty in the natural world is incredibly important to renew us, to still us. And I always feel like those are the places where I hear the whispers of God more than I do in a frenetic, man-made urban environment. Though I hear of people who live in urban environments who find wonderful ways to tune in spiritually and to stay awake and alert. And so, but I'm so grateful for the trees, the greenery. I can go up to the top of our property, and on a sunny day, I can see Mount Baker
Um,
quite year round. We have a little stream that flows through our property. It's on 5 acres, and when I was a boy, there was salmon spawning coming up the stream. Sadly, that has ended And I think it's just
Mm.
simply a result of industrial development and pollution in the overall city of Abbotsford and this surrounding area that means that salmon are no longer. But I very, very grateful for this little piece of land that I call home. And I think place matters. I actually think place, and again, this is maybe a connection to the consolation of the ordinary. I think the place where we live, the place of our roots, impacts what we do, what we create. And so I'm very conscious of that and very grateful whenever I travel out to somewhere else in the world and I'm back here.
Well, just as God has chosen our mate for us, I think He's chosen a place for us. And
Hmm.
we moved here 7 years ago after being out west for 50 years.
Hmm.
And I loved a lot about being out west, but it never felt like home.
Hmm.
I grew up here in Ontario,
Yeah.
and it's it's amazing how much coming back here I feel at home now. And
Yeah.
this very place, I could never have designed
Hmm.
a place that would be so perfect for me to live in. Yeah, I just
Yeah,
see.
that's beautiful. So somebody else designed it and then you moved into it and it became like a gift, right? It's like
Yeah,
for us,
yeah.
Mr. Kawano, a Japanese man, built this little farmhouse on 5 acres. Well, it was been way more than 5 acres when he built it in 1937. Place, it's like you talk about gift, you talk about how it's chosen for us. So, oh, but before we run out of time, there's one more quote of yours I want to read. Uh,
Can I just interject something about
yes,
because we're
absolutely.
we're talking now about our home, which
Yeah.
is so interesting in view of, that the line I quoted earlier from one of your songs, every time I hold you in my arms, I am home.
Hmm.
And I don't get many negative comments about the mystery of marriage, but I had one the other day. And this woman said to me that, not everybody has the kind of struggles that you did going into marriage. For some people, getting married is like coming home.
Mm.
And I thought, yeah, I'm sure that's true. That
Hmm.
it took me a few years to settle into Karen as my home. But
Mm.
thank goodness there are those couples for whom maybe from the beginning
Yeah.
they realize that miracle that, yeah, you are my home.
Yeah. Well, and we had for Love for a Lifetime, we had different couples sponsor different songs, and I sent out lyrics, and then people looked over lyrics and they go, "Oh, this is like our love story," or "This is," they resonated with different songs. So it's beautiful. 9 different couples, but well, actually one of them was a widow. And what's really interesting about her story, and maybe you noticed this in the CD booklet, but her her first marriage was a terrible marriage and ended in divorce. And her her second husband had the same experience, terrible first marriage. And I just feel for people like that have gone through this. It's so much, so difficult, so much pain. They just couldn't make it work, and there's all these layers to it, right? And then she feels like God brought into her life this amazing man. Her name is Jan, and his name was Richard. And they met and they knew God brought them together. And they knew it was like, this is going to be the greatest romance of all time. You know, that feeling, right? And they got married, and then she conceived their first child together. And then a week before the child was born, he was killed in a car crash.
Oh,
And she found out about my Love for a Lifetime project through her pastor and said, I want to sponsor a song in memory of my husband because I want other couples to know after all of what I went through, a terrible first marriage, and then a redemptive marriage, like coming home, like you're describing, and then losing that through tragedy, that it's still possible, that long love is possible. And she looked through all of the lyrics, and I had written 40 love songs for this project. And then for the ones for couples to pick, we had whittled it down to 20. Anyway, so she picked one of the songs. But as soon as I told my wife Joyce the story, she says, there's another song on your other 20 that we never included. I bet you this is a better match for Jan. It's called A Thousand Years.
Mm.
And it's almost as if from the other side of the veil of death, her husband, who has been taken from her, is singing, If I had a thousand years, I would spend them writing songs, and every song would say, I love you.
Mhm.
If I had a million words, I would pick and choose the best, and everyone would say. Anyway, so she picked that song. So I'm gonna tell you, man, when we were recording that song, and I told the story to the band as they were recording it with me, and everybody was almost in tears because they were thinking about Jan and they were thinking about this. And it's a little bit like what you talk about before about how love, there is an eternal element to it. It's almost like we don't fully understand. It's a mystery, huh? That's a good word. You used that word. Title of your book. But it's a mystery how that all works. And yeah. Um, so anyway, but I got to bring this in for a landing, and I got to do one more quote from Same Old, Same New, because this to me, oh, Mike, thank you. Page 71. The paradox of ordinariness is that as we focus on something ordinary, it becomes special, noteworthy, memorable, in a word, extraordinary. What produces this transformation? We do, granting extraordinary stature to whatever we notice or care for, whatever we love. Said Nicholas Samaras, anything can be sacred if we pay attention to it.
Mhm.
How is it we possess this extraordinary power? It is because God first paid attention to each one of us, loving us into existence. End quote. That's like
Mm.
mic drop. You know what that expression means. I'm not referring to your name there. I'm referring to microphone drop. It's like, what else do you say after you read that? You go, that's it. Like, that's the secret of life right there. Amazing.
Yeah, because God has paid us this extraordinary attention
Yeah.
and shared with us his very nature, which is love. He's given us the most powerful thing in the world, love.
Mhm.
And yeah, he says, go play in my sandbox. Here it is. And
Yeah. Or like you described in the prologue of The Mystery of Marriage, when you watch these two hawks swirl and float and play and like go and spend your life um in the dance of love, in the dance of existence and of joy and of taking in this the taking in how every ordinary leaf or whatever it is that you pay attention to
mhm,
becomes like a window into the divine, and this, you know your quote here from Nicholas, anything can be sacred if we pay attention to it. It's all sacred. The problem is we're not seeing it. The problem is we're not slowing down and embracing it. And I'm so grateful that your books, your words in the mystery of marriage and same old, same new, in the gospel according to Job and practicing the presence of people, all of these works that you've done, you've put together with love and care, and they've emerged from a life of prayer and prayer in the best sense of the word, because I think sometimes hyper religious people can stop noticing other people, can stop noticing, caring. And again, I love that in your book, Practicing the Presence of People. If we're going to love God, we have to learn to pay attention to and notice the people around us and to really take them in as a gift as well. And okay, well, I hope at some point we can carry on the conversation, maybe meet up in person, and but till then, all the best. And to all of you who watch this, thanks for watching. If you want to know more, Mike, where's the best way for people to get in touch with you and read and know what books you've published?
My website is mikemasonbooks.com.
Okay, very simple. MikeMasonBooks.com. Mine's BrianDoerksen.com. And if you have not read The Mystery of Marriage, if you have not read Same Old, Same New, you really should go out of your way, go to a bookstore, however you get your books, make sure you get a copy because you will not be disappointed. And yeah, it'll be a inspiration for your life. So thanks. Okay, bye for now, Mike.
Thank you, Brian, and God bless.
A soft voice, a kind word, a tender touch in a hard world. Your voice like rain after the seeds are sown. Your kindness and grace is all I've ever known. It's all I've ever known. We're not the same, you and me. You're an evergreen and I'm a maple tree. Sometimes I'm better.